The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with quiet murmurs as representatives from countless species gathered for what was supposed to be a historic day. The room itself was a marvel, its walls shimmering with holographic displays of distant galaxies and its ceiling stretching high above, dotted with glowing constellations. Delegates adjusted their robes, checked their notes, and exchanged polite greetings in dozens of languages. Everyone had come expecting progress. No one expected chaos. At the center of it all stood Daniel Carter, humanity's lead ambassador. His suit was perfectly pressed, but his face carried lines of exhaustion. He glanced at the rows of alien faces, some humanoid, others utterly alien, and took a deep breath. This moment would change everything. Behind him sat Rachel Monroe, his trusted advisor, her hands clasped tightly on the table as she watched the scene unfold. She didn't like what was about to happen, but there was no stopping it now. Esteemed members of the Galactic Council, Daniel began, his voice steadied despite the weight of his words. After careful consideration, humanity has reached a decision regarding our continued participation in these negotiations. A hush fell over the room. Every eye turned toward him, some curious, others suspicious. Even the normally stoic Centauri ambassador, Lyra Voss, leaned forward slightly, her sharp features betraying a flicker of unease. "We cannot continue these negotiations," Daniel continued, pausing to let the gravity of his statement sink in. "Humanity will no longer participate in this council." The reaction was immediate. Gasps echoed through the chamber, followed by a rising tide of voices. Some delegates shouted questions while others argued among themselves. One insectoid Krillian representative clicked his mandibles angrily, his antennae twitching in agitation. Across the table, Lyra Voss clenched her fists, her green skin darkening slightly, a sign of her growing frustration. Nearby, a small furry Irindi delegate whimpered softly, clearly distressed by the sudden turn of events. Rachel felt her stomach tighten. She wanted to step in, to offer some kind of explanation or reassurance, but she knew better than to interrupt now. Instead, she scanned the room, trying to gauge reactions. Most of the aliens looked shocked, though a few seemed smug, as if they'd expected this outcome all along. It wasn't hard to guess which factions those were. The Krillians, for instance, had always been vocal critics of humanity's presence in the council, accusing them of arrogance and self-interest. As the noise grew louder, Daniel raised his hand, signaling for silence. Slowly, the clamor subsided, though tension still crackled in the air. "This decision was not made lightly," he said firmly. "We believe that humanity's future lies elsewhere, beyond the constraints of this council. We thank you for your efforts thus far, but we must forge our own path." Lyra Voss finally spoke up, her voice cutting through the lingering murmurs. "You do realize what this means, Ambassador. Your departure undermines the very foundation of this council. Without unity, we risk descending into chaos." Daniel met her gaze without flinching. "Perhaps, but staying here risks something greater, the loss of our identity, our independence. Humanity cannot thrive under conditions that stifle our growth." Rachel winced inwardly. She understood the sentiment, but she also knew how dangerous it was. As the meeting adjourned in disarray, she couldn't shake the feeling that this decision would have consequences far beyond what anyone could predict. Outside the chamber, reporters waited eagerly for statements, their cameras flashing like lightning. Inside, the seeds of discord had already been sown. Back on Earth, the news of humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council spread like wildfire. Within hours, every major news outlet was covering the story, and social media platforms buzzed with heated debates. People were divided. Some celebrated the decision, waving flags and chanting slogans about freedom and independence. Others gathered in protest, holding signs that read "Peace over Pride" and "Don't abandon the galaxy." The streets of major cities were alive with emotion, a mix of anger, fear, and defiance. In Washington, D.C., President Laura Hayes sat in the Oval Office, staring at a live feed of the protests outside. She had known this announcement would be controversial, but she hadn't expected such an immediate and polarizing reaction. Her advisors stood nearby, whispering urgently about how to handle the growing unrest. Finally, she raised her hand to silence them. "I'll address the nation tonight," she said firmly. "We need to reassure people that this decision is for the best." That evening, Laura stepped up to the podium, flanked by American flags. Her expression was calm, but her hands gripped the edges of the lectern tightly. "My fellow citizens," she began, her voice steady, "today marks a new chapter for humanity. We have chosen to step away from the Galactic Council, not out of hostility, but out of a desire to chart our own course. This does not mean we are closing ourselves off. It means we are taking control of our destiny." Her words did little to ease tensions. Critics accused her of putting Earth at risk, while supporters praised her for standing up to alien interference. Among the loudest voices was Nathan Cole, a former military officer turned political analyst. Known for his blunt opinions and no-nonsense demeanor, Nathan appeared on several news programs to share his thoughts. "This isn't just about pride or sovereignty," he said during one interview, leaning forward earnestly. "If we don't tread carefully, we're inviting disaster. Isolation might feel good in the short term, but it leaves us vulnerable in the long run." Rachel Monroe watched the coverage from her apartment, feeling a deep sense of unease. She had been present when Daniel Carter made the announcement, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Why had they pulled out so suddenly? What pressures had led to this decision? Late that night, unable to sleep, she logged into her secure terminal and began digging through classified files related to the peace talks. What she found shocked her. Buried in layers of encrypted data was evidence suggesting that rogue elements within Earth's government had deliberately sabotaged the negotiations. There were memos, intercepted communications, and even recordings implicating William Drake, a high-ranking official known for his hawkish views. According to the documents, Drake had orchestrated the entire withdrawal, framing it as a bold move for independence, while secretly planning to align with certain alien factions. Rachel's heart raced as she pieced together the timeline. If this information got out, it could change everything. The next morning, Rachel decided to confront Daniel Carter directly. She met him in his office, a sleek, modern space filled with books and holographic displays. "You need to see this," she said, sliding a data chip across the desk. Daniel picked it up hesitantly, his brow furrowing as he reviewed the contents. When he finally looked up, his face was pale. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Does it matter?" Rachel replied sharply. "This proves we didn't make this decision freely. We were manipulated. You know what this means, don't you?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "Even if this is true, it doesn't change anything. The Council won't trust us now. Rejoining isn't an option." "It has to be," Rachel insisted. "If we don't act quickly, we're going to lose more than just our seat at the table. We're risking war." As they spoke, protests continued outside. In New York City, a massive crowd gathered in Times Square, their chants echoing off the towering buildings. Some held banners praising the decision, while others pleaded for reconciliation. Across the globe, similar scenes played out, each reflecting the same divide: hope versus fear, unity versus isolation. For better or worse, humanity's fate now rested on choices made in secrecy, and whether those choices could still be undone. Across the galaxy, reactions to humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council varied wildly. For some species, it was seen as an act of defiance, a bold declaration of independence. For others, it was a dangerous gamble that threatened the fragile peace they had worked so hard to build. The insectoid Krillians, with their rigid exoskeletons and sharp mandibles, viewed the move as outright aggression. Their leader, Commander Xylar, wasted no time in calling an emergency meeting of his war council. "The humans have shown their true colors," Thyler declared, his voice buzzing with anger. "They think they can walk away without consequences. We will show them otherwise. Around the table, other Krillian commanders clicked their mandibles in agreement. Within hours, fleets of sleek, black ships began mobilizing near human-controlled space, their weapons systems primed for action. Though they stopped short of launching an attack, their presence alone sent a clear message. Humanity's isolation would not go unchallenged. In contrast, the peaceful Irindi took a different approach. Known for their soft voices and gentle nature, the Irindi believed in dialogue over conflict. Their ambassador, Sayla, immediately called for a delegation to travel to Earth and reopen communication. "We must not let fear drive us apart," she urged during a private meeting with Lyravos, the Zentari ambassador. "If we do nothing, the rift will only grow wider." Lyra listened carefully, her green skin shimmering faintly under the light. She respected Sayla's optimism, but couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. "Your intentions are noble," she said finally, "but the humans have made their choice. They rejected us. Why should we risk more by reaching out again?" "Because it is the right thing to do," Sayla replied softly. Her large, luminous eyes held a quiet determination. "If we give up now, we lose any chance of repairing this. And if the Krillians are allowed to act unchecked, it could lead to war." Back at the Galactic Council, tensions continued to escalate. Delegates accused each other of influencing humanity's decision, pointing fingers across the chamber. Accusations flew thick and fast, with some blaming the Zentari for being too controlling and others criticizing the Krillians for alienating humanity with their aggressive stance. Tempers flared until physical altercations broke out among the delegates. Security drones swooped in to separate fighting parties, their metallic bodies glowing red as they enforced order. Amid the chaos, Lyravos vowed to uncover the truth behind humanity's abrupt exit. She retreated to her quarters, reviewing recordings of the fateful meeting, when Daniel Carter announced the withdrawal. Something about his tone troubled her. It lacked conviction, as though he were delivering lines written by someone else. Determined to find answers, she reached out to trusted allies within the council, piecing together fragments of information. Meanwhile, on Earth, public opinion remained deeply divided. Protesters clashed in the streets, their shouts drowning out attempts at rational discussion. In Los Angeles, a group of students organized a sit-in outside a government building, holding signs that read "Unity over Division." Nearby, a counter-protest erupted, with chants of "Earth First" echoing through the air. Police struggled to keep the two sides apart, their batons raised as tensions boiled over. Nathan Cole watched the unfolding events on a live broadcast, shaking his head in frustration. He had warned that pulling out of the council would create instability, but few had listened. Now, the cracks were beginning to show. "This isn't just about Earth anymore," he muttered to himself, jotting notes for his next commentary. "Every species out there is watching. If we don't fix this, we're looking at a galactic crisis." As days passed, the situation grew more volatile. Pirate raids targeting both human and alien ships became increasingly common, further straining relations. Reports poured in of cargo vessels being attacked in disputed territories, their crews left stranded or worse. Some suspected the Krillians of funding these attacks, though no concrete evidence surfaced. Others pointed fingers at rogue human factions seeking to exploit the chaos. Through it all, Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly to gather proof of William Drake's involvement. She knew exposing him could change everything, but time was running out. Across the galaxy, alliances shifted, tempers flared, and the fragile web of peace began to unravel thread by thread. Rachel Monroe spent her nights poring over classified files, her eyes straining against the dim glow of her terminal. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council wasn't a decision made in good faith. Every document she found pointed to one man, William Drake. A high-ranking official with a reputation for hardline policies, Drake had long argued that humanity should prioritize its own interests over cooperation with alien species. But what Rachel discovered went far beyond mere rhetoric. Drake had actively sabotaged the peace talks, manipulating events to force a rupture between Earth and the Council. One late evening, as rain pattered against her apartment window, Rachel stumbled upon a recording that made her blood run cold. It was a secret transmission between Drake and an unknown recipient. The voice on the other end was distorted, but the message was clear. "The humans will leave the Council," the distorted voice said. "In return, you will give us access to their technology." Rachel froze, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. This wasn't just sabotage, it was betrayal. Drake had struck a deal with the Krillians, trading Earth's secrets for their support in destabilizing the Council. Determined to expose the truth, Rachel reached out to Daniel Carter. She met him in a quiet corner of a cafe near the Capitol, away from prying eyes. "You need to hear this," she said, sliding a small data chip across the table. Daniel hesitated before inserting it into his portable device. As he listened to the recording, his expression darkened. "This is impossible," he muttered, shaking his head. "If this gets out, it could destroy everything." "It already has," Rachel replied sharply. "Drake's actions have put Earth at risk. If we don't act now, the consequences will be catastrophic." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "Even if this is true, what can we do? The Council won't trust us after what happened. Rejoining isn't an option." "It has to be," Rachel insisted. "We can't let Drake get away with this. If we expose him, we might still have a chance to fix things." Unsure of who else to turn to, Rachel decided to contact Nathan Cole. Though skeptical of government motives, Nathan had a knack for cutting through propaganda and getting to the truth. She arranged to meet him at a secluded park early the next morning. As they walked along a narrow path lined with trees, Rachel explained what she had uncovered. Nathan listened intently, his brow furrowed in thought. "If this is real," he said finally, "it changes everything. But proving it won't be easy. Drake's got powerful allies, and they'll do anything to protect him." "I know," Rachel admitted, "but we don't have a choice. If we don't try, the Krillians will use this to justify an attack. And if that happens, Earth won't stand a chance." Nathan nodded slowly, his mind racing. "All right," he said. "I'm in. But we'll need help, people we can trust, and we'll need evidence that even Drake can't deny." Over the next few days, Rachel and Nathan worked together to gather more proof. They traveled to remote colonies where Drake's influence was weaker, interviewing witnesses and collecting testimonies. One former aide to Drake, a nervous young man named Eric, provided crucial details about the officials' dealings with the Krillians. He thought he was protecting Earth, Eric stammered, glancing around as if expecting someone to overhear. But all he did was make things worse. As they pieced the puzzle together, tensions across the galaxy continued to rise. Pirate raids grew bolder, targeting not only human ships, but also those of neutral species caught in the crossfire. The Krillian fleet remained ominously close to Earth's borders, their ships casting long shadows over nearby colonies. Rumors spread of an impending invasion, fueling panic among settlers. Back on Earth, protests intensified. In Chicago, a massive crowd gathered outside Drake's office building, demanding answers. Signs read "Traitor" and "No deals with enemies." Police struggled to maintain order as tempers flared. Inside the building, Drake watched the chaos unfold on a monitor, his expression unreadable. He knew the truth would eventually come out, but by then, he hoped, it would be too late to stop the wheels he had set in motion. Weeks passed, and the galaxy teetered on the edge of chaos. Pirate raids grew more frequent, their attacks targeting both human and alien ships with reckless abandon. Colonies along the borders reported supply shortages as cargo vessels were ambushed and destroyed. The Krillian fleet loomed ominously near Earth's territory, its presence a constant reminder of the growing threat. On board the starship Aurora, Captain Julia Martinez prepared her crew for what felt like the inevitable: war. Julia stood on the bridge, her sharp brown eyes scanning the monitors that displayed the ship's status. She was a woman of quiet strength, respected by her crew for her calm demeanor and decisive leadership. Beside her, Lieutenant Aaron Blake adjusted the controls, his hands moving quickly but precisely. Aaron had always been loyal, but lately he seemed uneasy. "Captain," he said finally, breaking the silence, "do you think we're doing the right thing? Sticking our necks out like this?" Julia turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "The right thing isn't always easy, Aaron. If we don't try to help, the whole galaxy could fall apart. Humanity stepping away from the Council was bad enough. If we let things spiral further, it'll be worse than anyone imagined." Aaron frowned but didn't argue. He trusted Julia, even if he sometimes questioned the risks she was willing to take. The Aurora wasn't officially part of any military operation. It was supposed to be neutral. But when Sayla, the Irindi ambassador, reached out with a desperate plea for assistance, Julia hadn't hesitated. She agreed to escort Sayla and a small coalition of moderate species to Earth, hoping to reopen dialogue before it was too late. As the Aurora approached Earth's orbit, tension aboard the ship was palpable. Everyone knew the stakes. If Drake or his allies discovered what they were doing, they could label the mission an act of aggression. Still, Julia refused to back down. "We're not here to fight," she told her crew during a briefing. "We're here to remind everyone, including ourselves, that peace is possible, but it won't come without effort." Meanwhile, Rachel Monroe and Nathan Cole worked tirelessly to gather evidence against Drake. They had uncovered enough to expose his betrayal, but getting the information to the public was another challenge. Drake's influence ran deep, and his supporters were quick to silence dissent. One night, as Rachel transferred the data to a secure drive, she noticed a shadow move past her window. Her heart raced. Paranoia had become a constant companion, but this time, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Nathan arrived the next morning, carrying a duffel bag filled with supplies. "I've arranged for us to meet someone," he said, lowering his voice. "He used to work in communications for the government. If anyone can get this info out, it's him." Rachel nodded, though doubt lingered in her mind. Every step forward felt like 2 steps closer to danger. On Earth, protests continued to rage. In Washington, D.C., crowds gathered outside the White House, demanding answers about humanity's withdrawal from the Council. Some called for Drake's resignation, while others defended him as a patriot. Laura Hayes addressed the nation again, urging calm but offering few details. Behind closed doors, she wrestled with guilt over allowing the withdrawal to happen without fully understanding Drake's role. When the Aurora finally entered Earth's atmosphere, alarms blared at defense stations across the globe. Military forces scrambled to intercept the ship, branding it an unauthorized entry. News outlets broadcast live footage of the standoff, showing the sleek vessel hovering above New York City. Panic spread as people wondered if this was the start of an alien invasion. Julia activated the ship's communication system, her voice steady as she spoke. "This is Captain Julia Martins of the Aurora. We are not here to harm anyone. We seek peaceful negotiations. Please stand down." For a moment, it seemed like violence might erupt. Fighter jets circled the ship, their weapons locked and ready. Then, a transmission came through. It was Laura Hayes herself. "Captain Martinez," she said, her tone cautious but curious. "Explain your intentions." Julia hesitated only briefly. "Madam President, we bring ambassadors from several species who wish to speak with you. This is not an act of war. It's a chance to prevent one." Laura exchanged glances with her advisors before giving the order to stand down. As the fighter jets retreated, Julia allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The hardest part was still ahead, but they had taken the first step toward bridging the divide. Across the galaxy, millions watched and waited. The Aurora landed in a secure area outside New York City, its sleek hull gleaming under the bright floodlights. Soldiers surrounded the ship, their weapons at the ready, as a team of diplomats and government officials approached cautiously. Among them was President Laura Hayes, her face a mask of calm despite the storm brewing inside. She had agreed to meet with the alien delegation, but trust was in short supply. The world watched anxiously as the ship's ramp lowered, revealing Captain Julia Martinez and her crew, flanked by Sayla and other ambassadors from the coalition. Sayla stepped forward first, her soft voice carrying an unexpected strength. "We come in peace," she said simply, her luminous eyes meeting Laura's. "This is not an invasion. It is an opportunity to heal what has been broken." Laura nodded slowly, gesturing for the group to follow her into a nearby conference center. Inside, tensions ran high as humans and aliens sat across from one another at a long table. Rachel Monroe and Nathan Cole joined the discussion, their evidence against Drake finally brought into the open. Rachel placed a data chip on the table, her hands trembling slightly. "This proves that humanity's withdrawal wasn't a choice made freely," she explained. "William Drake manipulated events to push us out of the Council. He even made a deal with the Krillians, trading Earth's secrets for their support." Gasps rippled through the room. Some human officials looked shocked, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Drake himself was absent, having gone silent after the protests intensified. But his shadow loomed large over the proceedings. Laura leaned forward, her expression unreadable as she reviewed the contents of the data chip. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm. "If this is true, then we've been betrayed, not just by Drake, but by our own fears and divisions." The alien delegates listened intently, their reactions mixed. Lyra Voss, who had traveled with the coalition, crossed her arms tightly. "You must understand," she said, her tone sharp, "that trust cannot be rebuilt overnight. Your actions have consequences beyond your borders." "We know," Rachel replied earnestly, "but ignoring the truth won't fix anything. If we work together, we can stop Drake and prevent further damage." As the discussions continued, emotions flared. Some human leaders argued that exposing Drake wouldn't change the fact that Earth had walked away from the Council. Others insisted it was a chance to redeem themselves. Meanwhile, the alien delegates debated whether humanity deserved another opportunity. Sayla pleaded for patience, reminding everyone that unity was the only path to survival. "Hatred and fear will destroy us all," she said softly. "We must choose a better way." Outside, the situation grew more volatile. Protesters gathered near the conference center, their chants echoing through the streets. Some supported the coalition's efforts, holding signs that read "Peace over Pride." Others accused the aliens of meddling in Earth's affairs, shouting slogans like "Stay out of our world." Police struggled to keep the two groups apart, their batons raised as tempers boiled over. Back inside, Julia Martinez observed the chaos with quiet concern. She admired Rachel and Nathan's bravery, but couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The Krillian fleet remained dangerously close, and reports of skirmishes along the borders poured in hourly. "We need to act quickly," she whispered to Aaron during a break. "If we wait too long, it might be too late." By the end of the day, a tentative agreement emerged. Laura announced that Earth would reopen talks with the Galactic Council, but only under revised terms that granted humanity greater autonomy. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. As the delegates prepared to leave, Sayla approached Rachel and Nathan. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Without your courage, this would not have been possible." Rachel forced a smile, though exhaustion weighed heavily on her. "Let's hope it's enough," she murmured. As the Aurora departed Earth, Julia stood on the bridge, watching the planet shrink in the distance. Aaron joined her, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think it'll stick?" he asked quietly. The days following the agreement were a whirlwind of activity. News of Drake's betrayal spread like wildfire, thanks to Rachel and Nathan's efforts to release the evidence to the public. Media outlets around the world lit up with reports, dissecting every detail of the scandal. Protesters who had once rallied behind Drake now turned against him, demanding accountability. His name became synonymous with betrayal, and calls for his arrest grew louder by the hour. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered faintly in the hearts of many, hope that humanity could still find its place among the stars. But rebuilding trust was no small task. The Galactic Council remained skeptical of Earth's intentions, and even the revised terms of rejoining felt fragile, like a bridge made of glass. Sayla and Lyra Voss worked tirelessly to mediate between humans and alien factions, their patience tested at every turn. Meetings were tense, filled with heated arguments and accusations. Some species, like the Krillians, refused to acknowledge the new arrangement altogether. Their ships continued to patrol near Earth's borders, a constant reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the horizon. On board the Aurora, Captain Julia Martinez kept a close eye on the situation. Her crew monitored communications from both human and alien sources, piecing together intelligence about potential threats. Aaron Blake spent hours reviewing data, his brow furrowed in concentration. "The Krillians are mobilizing again," he reported one evening, pointing to a cluster of red blips on the ship's display. "If they're planning something, we need to know what it is." Julia nodded, her jaw tightening. "Keep tracking them," she said firmly, "and alert me the moment anything changes." Despite the progress made on Earth, she couldn't shake the feeling that war was still a real possibility. The Krillians weren't known for backing down, and their alliance with Drake had given them access to advanced human technology they could use as a weapon. Back on Earth, Rachel Monroe and Nathan Cole faced challenges of their own. While many hailed them as heroes for exposing Drake, others accused them of undermining humanity's sovereignty. Death threats poured in, forcing them to move locations frequently. One night, as they sat in a safe house reviewing updates from the Council, Rachel sighed heavily. "Do you ever wonder if it's worth it?" she asked quietly, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. "All this effort, all this risk, will it really make a difference?" Nathan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I do know one thing. If we give up now, everything we fought for will fall apart. We can't let fear win." Their determination inspired others to step forward. Across the globe, grassroots movements sprang up, calling for unity and cooperation. In cities like Tokyo, London, and Sao Paulo, people organized rallies to show their support for rejoining the Council. Students, artists, and activists used their platforms to spread messages of peace, creating murals, songs, and videos that went viral. Even within the military, some officers began advocating for diplomacy over conflict, urging leaders to prioritize dialogue. Meanwhile, President Laura Hayes worked to stabilize Earth's internal divisions. She addressed the nation regularly, emphasizing the importance of working together, not just with alien species, but also with one another. "We are stronger when we stand united," she declared during one speech. "This is not just about survival. It's about building a future where everyone has a voice." Despite these efforts, challenges persisted. Pirate raids escalated, targeting vulnerable colonies and straining resources. Reports came in of entire settlements being abandoned, their inhabitants fleeing in fear. The Arindi offered humanitarian aid, sending supplies and volunteers to help those affected. Sayla herself traveled to several colonies, her presence a comforting reminder that not all aliens saw humans as enemies. As weeks turned into months, small signs of progress emerged. Trade routes reopened cautiously, guarded by joint patrols of human and alien ships. Diplomatic exchanges resumed, though they were often awkward and strained. Still, each step forward mattered. Humanity's return to the Council wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a fragile thread weaving together a fractured galaxy. One evening, as Julia gazed out at the stars from the Aurora's observation deck, Aaron joined her. "Do you think we'll ever truly get past all this?" he asked softly. Julia smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the distant light of countless suns. "Maybe not today or tomorrow, but someday. I have to believe we will." The day of humanity's official return to the Galactic Council arrived, but it was far from a celebration. Delegates from across the galaxy gathered in the council chamber, their expressions wary and guarded. The air felt heavy with unspoken doubts and lingering mistrust. Daniel Carter, once the face of humanity's withdrawal, now stood at the center of the room, flanked by Rachel Monroe and President Laura Hayes. His voice carried a tone of humility as he addressed the assembly. "We come before you today not to justify our past actions," Daniel began, his words measured and deliberate, "but to acknowledge our mistakes and seek a path forward. Humanity understands the harm caused by our departure and the betrayal orchestrated by those who sought to divide us. We ask for your patience as we work to rebuild what was broken." His speech was met with silence at first, the kind that hung thick and uneasy. Then, slowly, Selah rose from her seat, her soft voice breaking through the tension. "Acknowledging fault is the first step toward healing," she said gently. "Let this moment mark a new beginning for all of us." Her words drew nods from some delegates, though others remained skeptical, their arms crossed tightly. Lyra Voss, however, wasn't ready to let humanity off so easily. She leaned forward, her green skin shimmering faintly under the chamber's lights. "Words are meaningless without action," she stated bluntly. "How can we trust you when your own leaders betrayed not only us, but also your people?" Laura Hayes stepped forward, her presence commanding yet calm. "Trust must be earned, Ambassador Voss, and we are prepared to do the work. But know this: William Drake acted alone, driven by fear and greed. He does not represent humanity. What he did was wrong, and justice will be served." The mention of Drake sparked murmurs throughout the room. Arrested days earlier after Rachel and Nathan's evidence came to light, Drake now faced charges of treason and conspiracy. His trial had become a global spectacle, further exposing the depths of his betrayal. Clips of his cold, defiant demeanor during hearings played endlessly on news networks, fueling public outrage. Many saw his downfall as proof that humanity was capable of holding itself accountable, a small but crucial step toward regaining trust. As the meeting continued, discussions shifted toward practical matters: revised trade agreements, shared security measures, and joint efforts to combat piracy. Progress was slow, each decision debated fiercely. Some factions pushed for harsh penalties against Earth, while others advocated for leniency. Through it all, Rachel and Nathan worked behind the scenes, ensuring that humanity's commitments were clear and achievable. Their role had evolved from whistleblowers to mediators, bridging gaps where they could. Outside the council chamber, reactions varied. On Earth, protests persisted, though their tone had softened. In New York City, crowds gathered near the United Nations building, holding signs that read "Unity is strength" and "One galaxy, one future." Elsewhere, skepticism lingered, particularly among hardline groups who viewed rejoining the council as a sign of weakness. Skirmishes broke out sporadically, remnants of the divisions that still fractured society. Meanwhile, aboard the Aurora, Captain Julia Martinez monitored developments closely. Her crew remained vigilant, patrolling key sectors to deter potential threats. Aaron Blake often joined her on the bridge, his eyes glued to the ship's monitors. Still no word from the Krillians. He asked one evening, his voice tinged with worry. "Nothing concrete," Julia replied, frowning at the display. "But they're out there, watching, waiting." Her instincts proved correct when an emergency transmission interrupted their routine. A human colony on the edge of Krillian space reported an attack, an ambush that left defenses crippled and civilians trapped. Julia wasted no time ordering the Aurora to intervene. As the ship raced toward the scene, she contacted the council, urging them to send reinforcements. For the first time, alien ships responded alongside hers, forming a coalition fleet determined to protect the vulnerable settlement. The intervention at the human colony marked a turning point, but it didn't erase the scars left by months of tension and mistrust. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, delegates gathered once again to discuss the aftermath of the attack. The atmosphere was still tense, but there was a subtle shift, a glimmer of cautious optimism that hadn't been there before. Selah addressed the assembly, her voice soft yet firm. Yesterday, we stood together to protect lives, she said, her luminous eyes scanning the room. Let that be the foundation for what comes next. Her words resonated with some, though skepticism remained strong. Lyra Voss crossed her arms, her green skin darkening slightly as she spoke. Protecting one colony does not undo the damage caused by years of division. Humanity must prove its commitment, not just today, but every day moving forward. Rachel Monroe listened intently, her heart pounding. She had worked tirelessly to expose Drake's betrayal and rebuild trust, but hearing Lyra's words reminded her how fragile progress truly was. Beside her, Nathan Cole leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. She's right, he whispered. One victory won't fix everything. But it's a start. President Laura Hayes took the podium, her presence calm but commanding. We understand the doubts many of you hold, she began, her voice steady. And we accept that rebuilding trust will take time. What I can promise is this: humanity is ready to learn, to listen, and to contribute. We are not asking for forgiveness. We are asking for a chance to earn it. Her speech drew mixed reactions. Some delegates nodded in agreement, while others exchanged skeptical glances. The Krillians, notably absent from the session, remained a looming threat. Their retreat during the colony attack had been unexpected, but no one believed they would stay quiet for long. Reports indicated their fleet was regrouping near disputed territories, preparing for something larger. Outside the council chamber, protests continued on Earth. In cities like London, Sydney, and Cape Town, crowds gathered to voice their opinions. Some supported rejoining the council, holding signs that read "Together we thrive" and "Peace over pride." Others remained fiercely opposed, shouting slogans like "Earth first" and "No alien control." Police struggled to keep opposing groups apart, their batons raised as tempers flared. Meanwhile, aboard the Aurora, Captain Julia Martinez reflected on the events of the past weeks. Her crew had played a crucial role in defending the colony, working alongside alien ships in a way that once seemed impossible. Yet, Julia knew the road ahead would be difficult. "It's not over," she told Aaron Blake during a quiet moment on the bridge. "The Krillians aren't done with us, and even if they were, there's still so much work to do." Aaron nodded, his expression serious. "I know. But for the first time, it feels like we're actually trying. That has to count for something." Back on Earth, Rachel and Nathan continued their efforts to foster understanding between humans and aliens. They organized town hall meetings, bringing together scientists, activists, and ordinary citizens to discuss ways to move forward. Rachel often found herself fielding tough questions from skeptics who doubted the council's intentions. Why should we trust them? One man demanded during a meeting in Chicago. "They've never cared about us." "Because we need each other," Rachel replied firmly. "No species can survive alone. Not anymore. If we don't work together, we'll all lose." Her words struck a chord with some attendees, sparking conversations that carried on long after the meetings ended. Slowly, attitudes began to shift. Even those who had initially opposed rejoining the council started to see the value of cooperation, though resistance remained strong in certain circles. As weeks passed, small victories added up. Trade routes reopened cautiously, guarded by joint patrols of human and alien ships. Diplomatic exchanges resumed, though they were often awkward and strained. Still, each step forward mattered. Humanity's return to the council wasn't perfect, but it was a start, a fragile thread weaving together a fractured galaxy. One evening, as Julia gazed out at the stars from the Aurora's observation deck, Aaron joined her. "Do you think we'll ever truly get past all this?" he asked softly. Julia smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the distant light of countless suns. "Maybe not today or tomorrow, but someday. I have to believe we will." Months passed, and the galaxy began to settle into a fragile rhythm. Humanity's reintegration into the Galactic Council was far from smooth, but it marked the beginning of something new, something hopeful. Small victories became stepping stones toward larger goals. Trade agreements were renegotiated, resources shared more equitably, and joint patrols helped curb pirate raids that had once terrorized border colonies. The Krillians remained a looming threat, their ships still patrolling distant sectors. But for now, they held their ground, watching and waiting. On Earth, life slowly returned to a sense of normalcy, though scars lingered. Cities bore the marks of protests that had erupted in the wake of humanity's withdrawal and subsequent return. Walls were covered in graffiti, some messages defiant, others pleading for unity. In New York City, a massive mural depicted hands of different species clasped together beneath the words "One Future." It had become a symbol of hope, drawing visitors from across the globe and even beyond. Rachel Monroe and Nathan Cole found themselves hailed as heroes, though neither sought the attention. They continued their work quietly, traveling between Earth and alien worlds to foster understanding. Rachel often spoke at schools and community centers, sharing stories of cooperation and resilience. "We're not so different," she would say, gesturing to images of alien faces on her presentation screen. "Fear makes us see differences, but courage helps us find common ground." Nathan, ever the pragmatist, focused on policy changes, working with both human leaders and alien diplomats to create systems that promoted transparency and accountability. "Trust isn't built overnight," he told a group of young activists during one meeting. "But every honest conversation gets us closer." President Laura Hayes faced challenges daily, balancing the demands of a divided public with the needs of an uncertain galaxy. Her approval ratings fluctuated, but she remained steadfast in her belief that unity was worth fighting for. During a speech at the United Nations, she addressed both humans and aliens alike. "Peace is not the absence of conflict," she said firmly. "It's the presence of effort, the choice to keep trying, even when it's hard." The Aurora became a symbol of this effort. Under Captain Julia Martinez's leadership, the ship served as a bridge between species, responding to crises and fostering collaboration. Aaron Blake grew more confident in his role, his initial doubts replaced by a quiet determination. "We're making a difference," he told Julia one evening as they reviewed mission reports, "even if it's just a little bit at a time." Julia smiled, leaning back in her chair. "That's all we can ask for," she replied. "Change doesn't happen overnight, but look how far we've come." Selah, too, played a vital role in maintaining peace. Her calm demeanor and unwavering optimism inspired others to keep pushing forward. She often visited Earth, speaking at diplomatic gatherings and meeting with ordinary citizens. "Every act of kindness matters," she told a crowd in Paris. "Every choice to listen instead of argue brings us closer to a better future." Lyra Voss remained cautious, her sharp eyes always watching for signs of betrayal. Yet even she softened slightly, acknowledging the progress made. "Time will tell if humanity is truly ready," she admitted during a private conversation with Rachel. "But I see promise where I once saw only risk." As stars twinkled above Earth, millions looked up with renewed hope. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges yet unseen. But for the first time in a long while, people dared to dream of a future where cooperation outweighed conflict. It wasn't perfect. It might never be. But it was enough. Across the galaxy, bridges were being rebuilt, one fragile thread at a time. And sometimes, that was all it took to hold the universe together.